The engines were already growling outside when I stepped out of the living room. I froze. Two police SUVs were parked directly at our gate. Lights off. Engines running. Dark silhouettes shifting inside. The kind of quiet that means trouble was about to erupt. My heart hammered against my ribs. Why are they here? I moved closer to the window, peeking through the blinds. The officers weren't stepping out. They were waiting, watching, like they were preparing for a raid. "Dana," I shouted, voice trembling, "you need to see this." My wife walked in calmly, wiping her hands on a towel. She moved behind me, looked out the window, and her entire posture changed. Her shoulders straightened. Her face hardened. That icy, controlled expression I'd only seen when she was in full sheriff mode returned. "They're here for us," I whispered. "No," she corrected, her voice low and steady. "They think they're here for us. Big difference." Before I could ask what she meant, the SUV doors swung open. 4 officers stepped out, hands resting on holsters, eyes fixed on our house like we were armed fugitives instead of a couple watching evening TV. One officer lifted a megaphone. My breath caught. "Ma'am, sir, this is the county police. Step outside slowly." "Are they insane?" I muttered, panic rising. "Why are they doing this?" Dana didn't answer. Her jaw clenched, and she walked toward the front door with absolute control, like she'd been expecting something like this. I grabbed her arm. "Dana, wait, they're on edge, they might." She placed a hand over mine. "I'm the sheriff," she said. "Let me handle my department." She opened the door before I could respond. The officers stiffened as she stepped outside. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't flinch. She just stared them down from the top of the steps. "Who's in charge?" she asked, voice sharp, commanding. The officer with the megaphone faltered, lowering it. "We received a report from the HOA. They said a woman matching your description was acting aggressively on the property." Dana laughed under her breath, a cold, humorless sound. "Aggressively, on my own property." The officers exchanged looks. "And you sent 2 SUVs and a response team without verifying the identity of the homeowner," Dana continued. Silence. She reached slowly into her blazer and pulled out her badge. The metal glinted under the streetlight like a blade. "I'm Sheriff Dana Williams. This is my home, and unless the HOA is suddenly above the law, you are standing here on false pretenses." The shift in their faces was immediate: shock, embarrassment, panic. Before they could speak, another SUV turned the corner and rolled up behind them. A senior officer stepped out, confused. "Why is half my patrol unit here?" he demanded. Dana didn't even look at him. She kept her eyes locked on the team that tried to intimidate her. "Because," she said, "your officers followed an HOA complaint without checking who lives here, and now they're parked at the sheriff's gate as if they're serving a warrant." The senior officer's face drained of color. "Sheriff, we had no idea." "You didn't ask." Her voice sliced through the air. I could see the officers' breathing hitch. They realized exactly how badly this had gone. Dana stepped closer, her presence towering. "All units," she commanded, "stand down now." Instant, immediate, like soldiers responding to a general. Engines shut off, radios clicked, hands moved away from weapons. But Dana wasn't done. She turned her gaze toward the HOA president's house down the street, lights on, blinds shaking like someone was watching nervously. She smiled. "Since the HOA wants to call the cops on the sheriff," she said quietly, "it's time I paid them a visit." Dana didn't wait for me to follow. She strode down the driveway, boots clicking against the concrete like a warning. I tried to keep up, heart pounding, knowing this wasn't a casual stroll. It was a calculated move that only a seasoned sheriff could pull off. Across the street, the HOA president's porch light flickered nervously. I could see Mrs. Carver, the petite but notoriously sharp HOA president, fidgeting behind the blinds. She had clearly not expected the homeowner to be the sheriff herself. Dana stopped in the middle of the street. Her eyes scanned the neighborhood, not missing a single face peeking from windows, not a single neighbor whispering behind curtains. "I'm here for a little clarity," Dana called out, her voice carrying authority that made even the officers hesitate. "Who authorized sending county police to harass a homeowner?" Mrs. Carver stepped outside, clutching a clipboard like a shield. "Sheriff Williams, we just received complaints. People were concerned." "Concerned about what?" Dana's tone was sharp now, slicing through the evening air. "A woman walking on her property, being polite. Or maybe the HOA simply enjoys intimidating people." The officers who had been lingering at the gate shifted nervously. Some looked embarrassed. Some avoided Dana's gaze completely. One brave soul, Officer Mills, the same one who had tried to speak to us earlier, murmured, It was just a misunderstanding, ma'am." Dana's gaze snapped to him. "Misunderstanding? Misunderstandings don't require two SUVs, radios crackling, and armed officers showing up at someone's gate." I swallowed hard, gripping my jacket. My wife's calm fury was terrifying, controlled, precise, and utterly convincing. Mrs. Carver's lip trembled. "Sheriff, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you never checked," Dana interrupted, stepping closer. Her hand hovered near her hip, just enough to remind everyone she was the law. "And now, thanks to your reckless actions, you've embarrassed half your HOA, wasted police resources, and violated my trust." The tension was so thick you could slice it. Neighbors began gathering in their yards, whispers growing. Dana turned her gaze to me briefly, a small nod signaling she had everything under control. "Here, what's going to happen," she continued, addressing Mrs. Carver and the HOA board who had now timidly emerged. "First, you will issue a formal apology for your false complaint. Second, you will reimburse the county for the officer's unnecessary response. And third, this is non-negotiable, you will no longer attempt to interfere with residents' private property without proper legal justification." Mrs. Carver swallowed hard. "Sheriff, No excuses," Dana said, her voice cold now. "If any of you try to bypass these rules, I will personally ensure that the full weight of the law is brought down upon you. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," they stammered, some bowing their heads in fear and shame. Then, in a moment of perfect timing, Dana glanced back at me, her signature half-smile appearing. "And as for the neighbors who enjoy gossiping." I raised an eyebrow. "They will be reminded that I see everything," she said, a subtle warning that left everyone on edge. By now, the police had begun to retreat, realizing that the situation was entirely under Dana's control. Officer Mills lingered just long enough to mumble an apology. Dana nodded slightly, her way of saying she accepted it, but she hadn't forgotten. Finally, Dana turned toward our house, sweeping her gaze over the street as though daring anyone to challenge her again. "Let's go home," she said, voice softening just a fraction. As we walked back, the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath, aware that the sheriff of the county wasn't just a title in this house. It was her presence, her authority, and her unwavering will. Back on our porch, I finally exhaled, heart still racing. "That was insane," I said. Dana leaned back, calm now, but with that fire in her eyes that never went out. "This is what happens when people mistake power for authority. Never forget it." And in that moment, I realized something. Messing with the sheriff was the single dumbest mistake anyone in this neighborhood could ever make. The night settled again, but this time, the quiet carried respect instead of tension. And as I watched Dana disappear into the house to check her files, I knew one thing for certain. The HOA, and anyone else thinking of crossing her, would never underestimate her again.